Hello and welcome to Mike Drops the Mic. I'm Mike Lineman. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Calvin Sun. He is a physician who graduated from Columbia University. He is also the CEO and founder of the Monsoon Diaries, which started as a travel blog, but is now turned into a sort of travel community where members travel around the world, and they've been to over 190 countries. It's been featured on BBC News, ABC News, MSNBC, TED, National Geographic, USA Today, and more. Dr. Sun, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty tired, but still happy to talk about something that's not COVID related. We can talk about COVID too. 13-hour shift done, 18 positive so far right now for COVID today, on nearly 300 patients.
Wow, sounds like a crazy busy day. 13 hours.
Yeah, that's what we signed up for.
Well, I will change the subject then.
No, we can talk about. I can talk about anything. Talk about goat cheese if you want to talk.
Well, I would like to talk about your traveling experience because I've been listening to you speak on a few podcasts. I've seen some of your videos, and honestly, I know I said we're only going to talk for a little bit, but I feel like I could talk to hours with you about all your different adventures I'm sure you've had traveling. So I'd like to talk about how you first got involved with traveling. How did you catch the travel bug and want to pursue traveling so much in your life?
I mean, it's a long story. It might need its own episode, but we've all had those parent family trips that, I mean, I'm very lucky and privileged to have that. But my dad loved traveling. Went on a few of his trips when I was younger, but that's mostly on his business trips. But personally, I didn't love it. I didn't like the idea of it. I wasn't even aware of it. I mean, I guess that's privilege and having the blinders on. But after my dad died of a sudden heart attack when I was 19, I was kind of forced to like live on my own and, figure things out. My mom got sick. So, I was taking care of myself. And one of those things was realizing that travel wasn't for me. That was not my priority. And I didn't care to do it. Didn't like the idea of it. Thought that as a native born and raised New Yorker, that the whole world comes to New York anyway, so why not just save money and just stay in one place. It was very childish, and I just didn't know any better. You don't know what you don't know. And then I lost a bet. I was bartending, one of my favorite jobs. I learned it from college. Random party, and one thing led to another, where I met this person who never left the bar. The next morning, made a bet, and, told her, I'll go to Egypt with her if tickets are under $600 as a joke, just to get her off my back. Within 36 hours, I was in Egypt with her because I'm a man of my word.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was like 2000 at the time when I made the bet because I thought it was just a joke, but then it dropped to like, it was under $700. It was $650. What a great deal. I would do it anyway. And I, didn't want to lose out on that. And I'm a man of my word. And I found myself in Egypt with her 36 hours later. And I was like, I don't know who you are, but here goes nothing. We ended up, it was during a precarious time. So she only stayed a few days and then left. I ended up, having 3 weeks to myself there alone. And while I was supposed to like also change my plans and leave early, so I didn't want to be alone in a country I wasn't prepared for, didn't speak the language, didn't know anyone, didn't pack anything, had no internet. Long story short, again, I ended up staying for 3 weeks because I was like, you know what, if I go home now and cut my trip short because I was scared, then I have a 100% chance to live, but 100% chance I'll regret it. And if I stay, there's a 40% chance I won't regret it. There's a 100% chance I won't regret it, 40% chance I'll live. I'll take the odds. And first week I hated it because I was like, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. The second week I was like, I'm getting the hang of this. And it wasn't until the third week being dragged kicking and screaming, I was like, oh, I see why people love traveling. And then that's when I came back, quit my job, started a travel blog. And that led to me to losing my next bet, to applying to medical school.
Well, I will say that I'm sure you're glad you had that bet and that experience in Egypt. I mean, that would be incredible, I'm sure, seeing the pyramids and all the wonderful things Egypt has to offer. It's a place I'd love to go to one day.
Yeah, I mean, wish we had done this earlier because I did a 10-year anniversary of travel where I returned to Egypt. This time not alone, with 18 strangers who came along. And I redid the entire itinerary I did with them that I had done in 10 years ago in Egypt, and this time sharing it. Happiness is best shared. So could have been you, but I might go back.
Yeah,
Uh,
I guess I missed out there. So when you're talking about your travel blog and you quitting your job, you've traveled over 100 and to over 150 different countries. Being now a physician, but you were in medical school at the time. How are you successfully able to balance your time management, your studies, and your finances? Because I mean, it's incredible just to go to medical school and come out as a physician, but be able to do all this traveling and see things you love to enjoy. How are you able to find balance in all of that?
well, you're assuming that I was a good student and I tested pretty well, and it wasn't. I was distracted. I was not the best student, but I think it was because of the thing that almost got me kicked out of medical school was the thing that got me to stay in medical school and get into a great residency and become a doctor. Because it's you have to do things for yourself in your own way. I didn't want, the part where I lost a bet to travel was just something that told me, like, I don't know everything. How was I supposed to know that I was meant for a life of travel unless I was putting myself in a position where the universe kind of compelled me based on serendipity, meeting this person and just trusting myself, following the signs until I realized I'm actually meant for traveling. But if I did things in a very linear fashion, I would have never traveled. I never would have done the event. I wouldn't have considered it. But serendipity had other plans for me. And that led me to not knowing if I was meant to be a doctor. After my dad died, I was actually decided not to become a doctor. And I was very happy with that decision. I was a bartender. Very easy job to like take time off and quit, by the way. So it wasn't like a big decision. I was like, I'm not going to work for the next couple of months. But because of the Egypt bet, I was like, you know what? I'm not sure if I'm actually meant to be a doctor. But I was going back and forth. It was like, that's a bigger commitment than just traveling. But again, I was like, let me put things in place where I can't get out of them. I'm a man of my word. Applied to every med school with a 3.0 GPA or whatever it was, below average scores, not a great student. So I can get rejected everywhere. Check that box off and know exactly I'm not meant to be a doctor. And then because I was very honest with my story, it's kind of like Office Space. The more honest you are and not kind of want things, the more they want you. And serendipity would have it that I would go into med school. And because I got into med school because of travel, that was the attitude I was going to go into it. And therefore, the answer to your question is how to do it. How did I do it? You commit to a habit, a lifestyle. It becomes a habit. Even there were times I was in an airplane, I was like, oh, I don't want to travel. I just want to like stay home, study, do this simple thing. Is kind of like the same feeling as like brushing your teeth after like a night out drinking, or changing into your pajamas. You don't want, or going to the gym, eating your vegetables. You don't want to do it, but there's some habit, hopefully, that you created that you're going to do it anyway, because habits are very strong. They're hard to break. They carry you forward when your will falters. And then you're actually grateful that you have good habits, because you look back, it's like, thank God I brushed my teeth. That I don't have to get a root canal. Even when I was drunk, I brushed my teeth. Like, thank God I eat my vegetables. So, I don't have hypertension. It's things you look back on. So when I came back from a trip, no matter how tired I was, no matter how dumb the idea was during med school, I was very grateful. It's like another story is in the books. And that just added up when I just became more and more grateful. It's the only thing that you buy that makes you richer. It's an investment. The more trips I went on, the more doctors I wanted to talk, the more my superiors wanted to talk about it, the more value I created myself inadvertently. So every time I almost got kicked out, then, I got pulled back in. It's like, no, don't leave. Like, you're such an inspiration for our students. I failed out kind of because I like got a 67.56 and you need a 68 to like keep passing. And they would round me up because, I was traveling and I had all these stories. I was also class president. But because of the virtue of all my stories, and I can bring a lot of value to, being able to, that time management I learned from coordinating travel and planning travel, I applied to being a student council president, throwing parties and events. Like, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And all those things just helped each other out. And then it get to a point where I realized I studying in different places. Decided to start studying in my trips, my third or fourth. I wish I learned this earlier. If you study in different environments, you actually retain the information better. Before I would just travel and study in the airplane or something. No, I was next time actually traveling and like, you know what? On a long bus ride between cities on a weekend trip, I would study. And I would just retain the information much more quickly than if I stayed at home and studied in a cafe for 14 hours. Everything would just become a blur. There's a whole New York Times article about this, by the way. And I would just come back just like finally doing better in school. And then, it just compounded itself. So it became a very synergistic, mutually beneficial relationship, this this travel and medical school life. But you don't expect that at the time, but you just have to commit to it, and then it somehow just falls together nicely.
Sure. And I mean, that makes you such a well-rounded individual. You're talking about being, your class president. And I mean, at Columbia, that's an incredible accomplishment. And going out and seeing all these things, that makes you so well-rounded. And one of the places that you went to in 2011 was North Korea. So what made you decide that you wanted to go and travel to North Korea?
Lost a bet, I think. What was it? I like put on my Facebook status. It's like, where should I go next for the summer? And I got a lot of like suggestions. Sri Lanka, I went. Bangladesh, I went. Turkey, I went. That's where I started. It was a 3-month summer between first year and second year medical school, and where most med students use that summer to like do research and publish a paper. I traveled, and one of those jokes of a comment, one of my friend who jokes like, "I dare you to go to North Korea," and I'm like, you know what? My whole life has been built on following through. I don't know unless I go. So, right, I'll go to Egypt if tickets under $700. Boom, happened. Well, one thing, I'll go to medical school if I apply everywhere, hoping to get rejected there and check that box off. Nope, they loved it. I got into one school. Oh my God, I have to go. People will kill for that privilege, and I didn't want to give up on that. And how do I know unless I do it? And luckily, it was something I was meant to do. Okay, wanted me to go to North Korea? As dumb as much of a joke of a comment you intended that suggestion to be, I have to follow through. And I looked up, and it's one of the easiest visas I've ever gotten. Most people don't assume that, but you don't know unless you try. It just took 2 emails, a form that took 5 minutes to fill out, and then within like a week, my visa was ready in Beijing. Getting the Chinese visa to go to Beijing to pick up your North Korean visa was much harder. That took 2 weeks of preparation, 3 weeks of preparation. And so I went, and little did I know that it was meant to be. That trip led to an accidental adventure and serendipity that led to my blog gaining in viewership and popularity that I didn't expect. What happened was the last night, my trip in my 1 week in North Korea in 2011. So things were very different than time. Not a single tourist got hurt. If you like Google like number of tourists who got hurt in North Korea, like it'll be 0. Do you know how many tourists get hurt in New York City every year, even before things went down in North Korea? Like it's 1 a day or 2 a day. It's 100 divided by 0. So it's just like there was no chance, and it was much safer at the time. I mean, would I go now? No, but like things were different. It was much more encouraging. So I went. The last day of my trip, we were staying in a hotel, and we ended up finding a floor within a floor, like being John Malkovich, a place that wasn't supposed to exist. You couldn't get in trouble at the time because other people have been there too. Nothing happened to them. So we knew that we were going to be fine. And we did get caught, and we were fine. The only thing that made us different was that we switched our memory cards before we headed to the airport on our flight out. So we actually got to keep all our photos and videos. They didn't, when they looked through our memory cards in the airport, they couldn't delete anything because we switched them. And I was able to post everything about that floor and that experience. A place that many people have gone to before, but just couldn't post about it because they didn't switch their memory cards. And that's what we did. That's what I did.
So what you're talking about is the hotel where all the travelers who come into North Korea, they all have to stay in the same hotel in the capital city of Pyongyang. And the hotel, the elevator, correct me if I'm wrong, but it goes like 3, 4, 6, 7. There's no 5th floor.
Yeah.
So when people go to the 5th floor, now you have to be extremely cautious because ever since what happened with Otto Warmbier, I mean, you're just not sure what could happen. You have to be so careful. But you went to the 5th floor and you recorded footage, like you mentioned, of propaganda against the United States and just all kinds of colorful banners and things like that. Were you scared when you went on the 5th floor and you realized, oh, wait, maybe I'm not supposed to be here? And what was like the scariest part of that?
Our guides knew we were going to go to the 5th floor because I think someone had mentioned it, and they're just like, whatever. And they plowed us with drinks actually it was the last night of the trip, and Koreans love to drink. Our guides, who are minders, technically work for the army. We can call them a spy, even trying to get intel on what's like to be an American. I don't know if it's for them or because they were ordered to, but they got drunk and they fed us drinks. I mean, it's very hard to be scared when you're, drunk. It's hard to be scared of certain people if they are the people who got drunk with you, but they couldn't hold their liquor in because they passed out at the bar.
Oh,
How
okay.
hard is it? Yeah, I mean, and it's also hard to be scared when you know that there are plenty of people before, hundreds of travelers have seen the fifth floor before us and gotten caught and nothing has happened to them. It's hard to be scared when the statistics at the time where not a single tourist had been harmed in the history of North Korean tourism in 2011. Things will be different if you ask me this question now. A lot of circumstances have changed, but that's the same thing. Would I be scared before COVID and the time after COVID? Life was different back then. So the circumstances were different. And, we were innocently just exploring the entire hotel because it's a hotel that only tourists can stay in. All the tourists can only stay in one hotel. It's on an island. At nighttime, you're not allowed to wander the city. So there's nothing to do but explore the hotel. That hotel was our city and home. So the North Koreans like, you go ahead. This is your place. Everything within the hotel island is, is within your, prerogative to explore. So we did that. If they didn't want to explore, they would lock the doors. That night, the fifth floor door was not locked when we decided to walk all from like the lobby basement to the 26th floor. And we started wandering because the door is open. We got caught. We got sent back to our room. They didn't even accompany us back to our room. They just told us all the elevators. We took the elevators back to our room, decided to go back. And we actually went back 6 times. And they just were just like, this is getting annoying. It's like, for them, I think it was like exploring like the service staff quarters or like exploring someone's lounge at the Sheraton. It's like, what are you doing here? This is employees only.
Sure.
Why, but nothing happened because at the time you couldn't get in trouble for finding a place that technically did not exist.
Right. And this hotel is very interesting because the amenities that they have in the hotel, they have, bowling alley, market, all kinds of things that quite comfortable and very, I want to say like very friendly to travelers because there's so much to do in this hotel. But then you go to the 5th floor, which is supposed to be considered perhaps employees only, and the propaganda that they have in there and potentially the security cameras, whether they're listening to hotel guest rooms and things like that, it's kind of an unknown. But it's why do you think they have the propaganda there on the 5th floor? Do you think it's to remind potentially the workers about the country's views?
I mean, we're pretty charming individuals. So it's to remind the workers whose side they're on, because when you hang out and travel with people like us, there are a lot of people from, the UK and United States and Japan, and the people who would sign up for a trip like North Korea self-selects themselves to be kind of different and odd, but also coming from a place where, they are able to stand up to what's traditional and do something different. So when it comes to talking with us, like they might feel like, wow, they're like living for themselves. They're individuals. And, North Korea likes the tourism and they want to make sure that people don't stray too far. So it's kind of a reminder when they go back to the staff quarters whose side they're on with these paintings. And it's pretty dramatic. But, I think that's not the most controversial part of the hotel, actually. I think the most controversial part is that there's a casino in the basement of that hotel. We gambled. We played blackjack in a socialist communist country like North Korea. I mean, technically they claim it was run by the Chinese staff there, so it's not a North Korean thing, but it's accessible in Pyongyang that you could gamble. You can't even do that in New York.
Interesting. I didn't know they had a casino there. That is interesting.
Tiny casino, but yes, you can legally gamble in a communist socialist place like Pyongyang, North Korea, something that you cannot do legally in New York City, New Amsterdam. What do you want to call it? The Dutch of America, former Dutch colony of America that loves to make money.
Right.
Casinos in New York City.
So when you're not in the hotel in Pyongyang, you're not allowed to travel outside of the capital city. It's kind of your tours there, they already have everything scheduled out for you. You can't go off on your own. And like you said, the only time you can really go off on your own is in the hotel. So what was an average day like for you whenever you were there going out to see different monuments and statues and things like that? What was the experience like?
It's very surreal still. Like, they will try to like direct your attention away from certain things like the unfinished Ryokyong Hotel, the one that looks like a pyramid, because they're kind of embarrassed by like they couldn't finish the construction. It's like poorly built. But we still took photos of it and they didn't get upset. But technically, they were very loose with us. In 2011, the relations were pretty good. There was relatively little drama at the time compared to it is now. And there's a part of the tour where we started the trip by introducing ourselves to our guides and minders by giving them gifts from China. Packets of cigarettes, bottles of alcohol, things they could get in North Korea, but it was just like a gesture of like, thank you for taking care of us. Here's like, a $5 pack of cigarettes. And they loved it. They were just like, this is great. Thanks for that. And then as a result, they would like look the other way. We were able to cross the street on our own. We were able to be unaccompanied in certain points. My first time shooting a gun was in North Korea in a firing range.
Wow.
I was fine with that. And my first time gambling technically was in North Korea, in Pyongyang. The fifth floor. I mean, I think they owed a lot to that, is that humans are still emotional creatures, no matter what country you're part of. At the end of the day, you may logically say this is not right, but ultimately, emotionally, that's where the decision, is made. And emotionally, they really liked us. They really enjoyed our company, and they didn't want, any harm to come to us. It's the same with medical school. Like, this is a guy who travels all the time, doesn't seem like he takes medical school seriously. And I didn't even know I wanted to be a doctor at the time. I was just falling through on a bet. But emotionally, they were like, I really like this guy. It's very hard to kick him out because, he is, living his best life as a med student, something that we struggle with for a community that's has a difficult time with mental health, where physicians don't know how to talk about mental health and recharge from an empty cup. And here I was doing it inadvertently, not realizing that I was doing something that they were looking for. That's why they took me in the first place, to be that, different person. If anything, they were telling me that I was the imposter syndrome. I was the imposter. I did get to the back door. I was the imposter, but no matter how much of an imposter I was, it's an emotional decision. They wanted to keep me. And the same with the North Koreans wanted for us to have a great experience.
Sure. And outside of the capital city of Pyongyang, you talk about, there's a lot of famous stories of North Korean civilians who have escaped North Korea, and they tell their story, whether that's like Evelyn Jeong, Yanami Park. They have written books, they've done talks and stuff like that about how different life is outside of the capital city, to the concentration camps and terrible working environment and people getting taken in the middle of the night that can happen outside of the capital city. When you were there, did you ever ask any questions about things that would happen outside of Pyongyang, or no?
I mean, does outside of Pyongyang is in New York City, because I think our next door neighbor is one of them, as well as the stuff I've done outside of, like back in Colombia. I think I worked for, I think CU Link was part of our umbrella organization, so we worked with them a little bit. We spoke with a lot of them, and I think a couple events here and there in New York. So yeah, we've gotten their side of the story. But are you talking about in North Korea?
Yeah, I'm talking about in North Korea. I'm saying, like, when you were in North Korea, did you talk to any of, because you said you got drunk with some of these guards and some of these locals there.
Yeah.
They obviously, I mean, you're a very outgoing person, but they obviously felt quite comfortable with you. Did you ever ask any type of borderline questions about what's life like outside the capital city?
I think my compatriots did from the UK. We basically, it's kind of like being a street medic. You pick the person that's more arrestable to identify yourself, who has the most privilege. It wasn't going to be the Americans. It would be the Austrians, the Germans, and the British. And they asked questions, and doesn't matter as long as they get the answers. They're very good, even no matter how drunk they are. They're just like, I can't talk about it, or like, I don't know enough. You can plead coy. Those are the officers, the minders. And when it comes to the civilians, they don't want to talk to us. Like, they can't speak English, and we can't speak their dialect of Korean. I mean, they can't. I mean, I had a Korean person on my trip, but everyone thought she was Chinese. Even the Koreans did. So I'm not going to say anything. But you didn't ask, don't tell. Like, I didn't say. We knew later that she was Korean. But that's the reason they don't want to take Koreans, because they don't want Koreans to communicate with their local population. So we had a big, disconnect when trying to talk to the locals. They don't want to talk to us. And how can you if we don't speak their dialect and they don't speak English?
Sure.
Yeah. With the minders, though, they said a few things, but a lot of times, they're pretty trained, or, you as drunk as you are, sometimes you'll be like, nope, that's where you cross the line. I'm not talking about it. I know you're trying to get me in trouble with my partner, or vice versa. So I think that's what they're similar to us. Like I think we understand that. But yeah, you can ask the British and the Austrians what they got out of it. But if anything, what they told us is like they always flip it back onto you. Like, we heard Michael Jackson died of AIDS. Why didn't you take care of him? Things like that. Or
Really?
like all our impression of America is the episode of the show Cops. And if you think about it, if you only all you know about America is just endless episodes of Cops, you'd think it's a struggling country that's full of crime. And in their to their respect, they're not wrong in that we have the highest guns per capita in the world, and the only one that comes second is Yemen, which is still going through a war right now.
Sure.
Um, so they I think trained to be able to flip it back on you. How do you treat people of color in your country?
Yeah.
Russia and the UN, they're not wrong. So it is a tit for tat.
Now, did they ever initiate any conversations over in North Korea about what is America like and stuff like that? I know you
Yeah,
talked
they
about.
would they love talking about like, is it like these episodes of Cops that we're fed about America?
Uh-huh.
When you talk, depends on who you're talking to. You talk to a conservative from a red state, they'll be like, it's great, I love my guns. And they'll be like, oh, that's scary. Like, you let random people like him with a gun who's getting drunk right now.
Yeah.
And they're not wrong. Or they're talking to a liberal from New York or California, and they're like, well, it's like kind of like this. And it's like, oh, it sounds like you two have a disconnect, or there's a civil war, like complete opposite America. They're not wrong for saying that too. They could say any of those things because they are trained to. These are the people that are prepped to be tour guides and get ready for any challenges by tourists. But most tourists that go to North Korea are told by the intermediaries to not try to toe the line, because you don't want to get kicked out and forfeit your refund. I mean, that goes for any country you visit. You should be respectful to your hosts. So there's that line where I think if somebody did actually do something mocking when they were drunk, and their intermediary, like a British representative tour guide, just shut him, no matter how drunk he was. He actually got up, heard it, and just like shut him down. It's like, you shut the fuck up right now.
Wow.
And the guy who did something mocking just like really got really scared and sorry dad kind of thing. But that wasn't even the North Koreans. They didn't even notice.
Sure. What about like in terms of like pop culture and things like that? Do they have any sort over there? I mean, I got Rocky Balboa behind me on this shoulder. I got Marvel movies on this shoulder. Was there any kind of pop culture, just any rumors they heard about the United States that might be, I don't know, like they were curious about Mickey Mouse or anything like that?
Oh yeah, there's Mickey Mouse watches everywhere. It's not that hard to find. Like, we saw that. I mean, it's like everything up to like Michael Jackson. I think we went to a karaoke bar, and the latest songs we could find is like "Beat It" by Michael Jackson, and they played the full music video.
Mm.
So I mean, I had mentioned earlier in the podcast that they would say like, "Oh, Michael Jackson, we love him.
Right.
He died of AIDS, right?"
Yeah. But nothing like too modern. They don't know like in 2000. Okay.
Not really. I mean, I don't know. That was 2011. I don't know. The Marvel Cinematic Universe wasn't really kicking off at the time in
Sure.
2011. What was cool in 2011? It's hard, right? We don't know.
Out, but that was a Captain America one, and that's not
Yeah,
not
but like
not
I would go party in like Russia or Europe and Hungary or Austria, and they're playing songs like 6 years ago, and I'm like, seriously? Like, and I'll go up to DJ, do you have this song? Do you have DJ saying "Turn Down for What" in like 2012? Or like, they're like, what?
no
And
black.
it's like Austria, that's like Vienna, of a Western European country. That's like in Hungary, Budapest, one of my favorite cities, who's like super cool and very fun. And one of the best bars in the world is there, the Room Bar. And music would be like 2 to 3 years behind.
Interesting. So I have to ask, just because there was a huge issue in 2014, 2015 about the movie The Interview that came out, the comedy movie. Have you seen the movie?
No, I've actually seen scenes of it, but I don't have time to watch movies unless it's like a Marvel
Pretty
movie.
busy guy, I guess, but
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some, and I think it's funny and hilarious, but yeah, I know about it.
I was curious because they talk about how when the characters in the movie go to Pyongyang, the capital, and they set up a fake grocery store to make it appear like everyone is eating well in North Korea, to kind of actually cover up the fact that such a large population of the country is starving and things like that. I was wondering if you experienced anything that could maybe be similar in terms of propaganda, not inside the hotel, but outside the hotel, that was you saw and you were like, this is very misleading, and I
I
don't.
think if you venture out of Pyongyang, which we didn't do during our itinerary, that would be the case. But if you're a person, a North Korean living in Pyongyang, you are rich enough to make it to Pyongyang. The people that you're talking about do exist, but they're going to be in the countryside, in the rural parts. And that wouldn't be in our itinerary. So that grocery store in Pyongyang, that microbrew in Pyongyang, it just didn't feel that way. It didn't feel inauthentic at all. But there, we do know, like but that's not just North Korea. That's like most, developing nations. If you're living in the capital city, you've made it. Like that's a big deal. So it goes to the North Koreans that live in Pyongyang. They're going to be the city folk that like know somebody who knows somebody who are really high up. The majority of the people who are suffering in North Korea, the ones you're talking about, are going to be not going to be in Pyongyang. They're going to be in camps. They're going to be in rural farmlands. Those are the ones that are. I mean, as if every developing nation that the global North has left behind in some way. We're having that problem with vaccines. Who's not getting vaccinated? The majority of the global South and developing world in rural countrysides. Who is getting vaccinated in those countries? The people who are rich enough to live in capital cities, who have access. And I think that's the same that goes with North Korea, that it's so hard to state. You don't need to state something fake in North Korea because everyone who made it Pyongyang is kind of like blissfully unaware and happy in terms of the Plato's cave, or just turning a blind eye to what's happening outside the capital city. But that's like every developing country.
Sure. But yeah,
Like New York City. You have someone in New York. Like, how do we know what's really going on in Alabama? I know plenty of New Yorkers have never even been there before.
right. But I mean, that has to be such a crazy thing, living living inside the capital and not experiencing, and vice versa, because so many people who aren't living in the capital in North Korea have never even been to the capital. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be.
Many people in New York, people in the United States have never been to New York, and they hate people like us.
I've been to New York a few times. I enjoy New
Good.
York.
I'm glad you did. But there are people who just like, I'll never go there, and it's too fast, too crazy, and they're not even representative of the United States of America. They're more of a Dutch colony. I've heard that before. And those are the people who don't get vaccinated. I don't know. I mean, it's just like there's always disparate, diametrically opposed concepts of what it means to be a certain country. Because you can have two polar opposites in terms of an identity and still be American.
Yeah. Well, I want to be sensitive to your time. The last thing I do at the end of each interview is what I call 7 quick questions.
Sure.
So short answer questions, can be related to what we talked about or not related, just to get to know you a little bit better. Is that okay?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could go on all night. I feel like we just got started.
Well, I want to be sensitive to your time. Trust me. I'd love to talk with you about, Egypt, and
I don't have to go to bed for another like hour and a half. So it's up to you. But okay.
Well, maybe at some point, if you're willing, we could talk on another occasion, because
Sure.
I'd love to talk to you about. I've always wanted to go to South Africa and Egypt and Brazil and all these places, and I'd love to get.
Any country you want, I can talk about. I have a story there.
All right, we'll plan on that maybe in the future. Sound good?
Yep.
All right, 7 quick questions. What is your favorite movie?
It depends on the context of my feelings. So you want to do what? My idea of love? You want to do fun? Do you want to do like my core soul? It depends.
Let's do the core soul. Let's do that.
Also would be Fight Club, because I come from that generation, and also watched it more than often than anything else. You want to do another category?
Yeah. Give me another one.
In terms of like my idea of love and romance would be Before Sunset, Vanilla Sky, Lost in Translation, to a degree Before Sunrise, but I like Before Sunset way better. And Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And in terms of like just general action, then it'll be, I mean, just pure, well done things. Most Christopher Nolan movies like Inception and The Dark Knight.
Sure. Yeah. What are your favorite sports, whether that's to watch or to play?
Swimming. I mean, I'm a little biased. Team
Okay.
captain, varsity. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Love it. Yeah. Lacrosse, soccer, or football, what do you want to call it? Those are fun too.
Now, I'm a college student right now, and one of the issues that, I mean, you talked about how you were able to overcome finances, and I've heard you talk in the past about different techniques you used, whether that was the credit card information and things like that. But if you're a college student on a tight budget, what are three countries that you would recommend going to?
It would be, well, I mean, I was in that position where I was about to sign up for $250,000 in debt, in med school debt. I was just, running off bartending tips for cash. I had quit everything else to travel. And the first three places I picked was Southeast Asia, the Philippines, and then to Vietnam, and then Cambodia. But that was my first three countries, and I'm glad I did it. But if you really, really want to save money, um, I mean, depends on the kind of person. If it's just purely through the focus and lens of money, uh, Bangladesh, you can go a long way there. Laos, to a degree, or the Philippines, and Budapest, or Hungary.
Sounds like a lot of Southeast Asian countries.
But Hungary is a big crown jewel for me because it's like has a little bit of everything. Oh, and Slovenia, that's a good one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What will be the next country that you go to? I know I've heard you say before that you don't necessarily like duplicating countries, and I know I've heard you say that you go to India. That's one of your favorite countries you've been to.
Mhm.
But where will be the next country you will go?
I just got back from the Cayman Islands like 2 days ago. Does that count? But I guess next one in about 1 week and a half, hopefully, I will be in Martinique and Saint Lucia, and
Okay.
then after that it will be Mali and Burkina Faso 3 weeks after that, and then Syria a month after that, Tahiti a month after that, Wales, and then the North Pole and Svalbard.
Wow, that's a lot of exciting adventures coming up here. That's wonderful. When you were in North Korea, what was your favorite food that you ate? And what was
It
your
was,
least favorite food?
I remember it even fondly. It was Peking duck, a Chinese Peking duck, Korean barbecue style.
That was your favorite?
Yeah, in North Korea. Yeah, that was my
What
favorite.
about least favorite?
Least favorite?
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably didn't eat it. And I was like, oh no, I'm not in the mood for breakfast today.
Interesting.
I eat it.
Um, if you're traveling to a country, lots of countries are known for having excellent food, whether that's India, Thailand. Where, if you're looking strictly at food, what is the best country to go to get food?
I don't discriminate what I put in my mouth in terms of food. I eat everything. I love everything. But the ones that stand out would be Spain, Japan,
Mm.
and Iran.
What in Japan would that be? Just sushi primarily,
Well,
or
I'm speaking about the terms like anything that they have. If you want fried chicken in a deli, it's going to be the best, one of the best fried chicken. I mean, I think Bourdain talks about it. Lawson fried chicken is like one of his top recommendations, and Lawson is like a 7-Eleven in Japan. Like they do food, anything you want. You want McDonald's in Japan style? I'm sure it'll be the best McDonald's you ever have. Oh yeah, but if you want sushi, obviously it's going to be Japan. If you want ramen, it's going to be the best in Japan. So that's like a no-brainer. Get it from the source. But like I'm speaking of those countries, like if you want anything, like I just want fried chicken. I don't care if it's Japanese or not. It's going to be the best. Somehow Japan is going to make it really, really good. Anything you put in your mouth is going to be consistently really good. Spain comes pretty close too. Morocco to a degree, but it's next to Spain, so you can call it Iberia area, and Iran, because they could do things with food that I never thought was possible.
interesting? See, I went to the first international trip I took besides Canada was I went to Thailand with a couple buddies from high school, and we flew into Japan. We were just there for a few hours or whatever, and we went into Thailand. But you mentioned the 7-Eleven, and I have to say the 7-Elevens in Thailand, they were a big deal. They were on every block, and the food was fantastic inside of them. It's way different than in the United States 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting that you brought that up in Japan as well. My last question for you is, what are your three favorite countries, not keeping track of budget,
Mhm.
but if you're just going for 2 weeks or a month, anything like that, to three countries, where would you like to go?
But the timing parameter is very important when you say that. If it's going to be 3 weeks to a month, it'll be India. But if you're going to say 3 days, I would not do India because it's just not impossible. Like try to do New York in 3 hours. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be magical, but it's just not the same. But in the parameter that you asked, which is 3 weeks to a month, India for sure. The Trans-Siberian was really memorable. Cuba for 1 week. I think 3 weeks to a month is a lot for Cuba. So that was it, but that was one of my favorites. But New Zealand, and just I loved Budapest. Hungary is one of my favorite cities, and Slovenia, underrated. And then a lot of the Middle East. It's very hard to pick a favorite from that, but like that general region, 3 weeks to a month, I would do the Levant, Oman, Yemen.
I'm actually going to ask you one final question because
Yeah, you have to.
I mean, I brought it up a little bit earlier, but I talked about how South Africa is a country I've always wanted to go to. I mean, you go on the West Coast, completely different than the East Coast. I mean, it's kind of like the United States in that manner. There's such a wide, diverse area that it is. What was your experience like in South Africa, and would you recommend going there?
So it depends on what part of South Africa. South Africa has so many different landscapes and diversity in terms of sites. So like I love Joburg because it was the closest to New York City in terms of diversity, history, cultural richness, and it was just raw and real. Had a lot more serendipities in terms of meeting, people and having great conversations, and the people were just so fascinating and cosmopolitan. And then Cape Town is like California. Beautiful Table Mountain, also lots of places where I connect to a lot of individuals in a different way, in a way that I would, find magic on the Pacific Coast Highway or, going on to LA or San Francisco. Very different from the kind of magic if you were to visit New York. And so South Africa was very diverse in terms of just these two main cities. I mean, you go to Durban or Kruger National Park, like you're going to have all that. And then you do the day trip to Lesotho or Swatini, formerly known as Swaziland. Like that's within two countries inside enclaves within South Africa. Those are very much part of the diaspora as well when you're there. But the most amazing part of South Africa was the easy trip to Namibia, the country that goes on the north side, because that is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. That ties in with Antarctica as the other most beautiful, Antarctica and Greenland as the two other most beautiful place, but the opposite extreme. Well, those are winter wonderlands and like being a different planet. Namibia is a different planet, but in the desert sense, where you have dunes that make the skies literally orange. And that's a stone's throw away from South Africa. One of the best meals I've had, La Colombe, was in Cape Town. So it's just like that region. And you can't just really see it or take it at that one place where you go. When you're in South Africa, you need to do all of it, including Namibia, and Lesotho, and Eswatini.
Well, when I plan on going to South Africa at some point in my life, I'm definitely not going to be there for 3 days. It's going to have to be many weeks, maybe a month. I have to experience it because there's so much to experience there.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I remember when we flew at Cape Town and we were at Lion's Head, on top of Lion's Head, within like 3 to 4 hours. And these girls asked my friend for a drink of water. And then we found out later that they knew 3 of our mutual friends from New York. And it was the serendipity after serendipity after serendipity of just this girl just asked for water, and they were locals from Cape Town. And I just wanted to reconnect with me on Instagram, a month ago, who found out that a mutual friend of ours who follows me, she's this famous diver and author from Thailand, was in South Africa. And I was like, oh, you should meet up with her. She's there right now. It's like, oh, I know of her. She's famous, but I've been following her on Instagram when she's visiting South Africa. And now they're having brunch.
Wow, that's crazy. That's beautiful. That's the internet and making connections with people in different countries. That's beautiful how that works out like that.
Yeah, the only other place that's like that is India and New Zealand. That's consistently magical.
Interesting. Well, Calvin, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking to me after such a long day at work. And I really
you emailed me literally 6 hours ago introducing yourself.
Yeah, I know. I talk about short notice and
300 patients later and lots of COVID and 13-hour shifts. I follow through, just like the Benin that led me to Egypt. I don't flake.
Well, I appreciate you following through, and thank you again for talking with me.
Of course, the pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.